Hello and welcome to the latest EnvCast episode. EnvCast is a Society for the Environment podcast, bringing you environmental professionals in conversation each month. Each episode is designed to provide insight into the life of registered environmental professionals, featuring experts from across a wide range of sectors and disciplines. We explore what they do, why they do it, how they got to where they are now, and their future ambitions. Each guest has verified their environmental credentials by achieving Chartered Environmentalist, Registered Environmental Practitioner, or Registered Environmental Technician registration. To learn more about the Society for the Environment or our environmental registrations, please visit socenv.org.uk. That's socenv.org.uk. Enjoy the episode. Hello, I'm Phil from the Society for the Environment and welcome to this month's EnvCast episode. Today's special guest is running their own business and gains their Chartered Environmentalist registration via their membership of the Chartered Institute of Water and Environmental Management, or CIWEM for short, and that was in 2016. They are also a chartered scientist and a chartered water and environment manager with CIWEM as well. A key part of their career that I'm hoping we're going to touch on at some point is that they've done work around the world in various different countries, and I wonder if more countries on the list soon, but we'll find out. So our guest today, and I'm very pleased to welcome, is Rami Kremesti, and we'll welcome you to EnvCast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Very nice to have you. As always on EnvCast, to start proceedings, I'm going to hand over straight to our guest to give us a bit of a flavour of what you're doing in your current job. So can I hand over straight over to you?
Yeah, no problem. Basically, I'm a freelance consultant. I have my own consultancy, and currently I'm helping a very beautiful hotel in Ireland on a beautiful loch to achieve their effluent parameters from their sewage treatment plant. They had issues with pH, and I quickly realized that the water is very soft. There's no alkalinity in it. So when nitrification started, by its very chemistry, the pH goes down. So we solved that problem by dosing soda crystals, which is an inexpensive chemical. However, they also have issues with phosphorus, suspended solids, COD, and BOD. So we are working on tackling those issues one by one. And it's been sort of like a forensic investigation almost. And, they had stopped dosing one of their chemicals, the PAC, the polyaluminum chloride. And when we started dosing that, we saw improvement in phosphorus. But then I suspected that the system is oversized. So we tested for filamentous bacteria, and lo and behold, we saw them on the microscope, which means basically that the bacteria are starved, and they kind of sort of like lose weight, and they become very thin and stocky, and they start to float on the surface, and they come out of the effluent, and you get suspended solids on BOD. We also established that we did a test on the effluent sample. We filtered it in a 0.45 micron filter, and we found out that the BOD is not particulate, but the phosphorus is particulate. So basically, things are carrying over, and we're looking into different ways to solve that. One of them is installing a mixer for the coagulation to work better, but it's expensive. We're looking at cheaper alternatives like dosing activated carbon, which will also remove the ammonia. Their ammonia is a little bit high. It will remove the COD because COD is not biodegradable, and we might be able to catch the phosphorus. So we're looking at a one chemical trick to solve 4 problems at the same time. It's been really exciting.
Well, that sounds very efficient for a start. I won't pretend to understand all of what you've just said. It's fair to say. Right.
Yeah, it's sewage treatment terminology.
Yes, yeah. What's BOD?
BOD is biochemical oxygen demand, basically dissolved organic carbon in the water.
Okay.
And if it gets in a river, basically it consumes oxygen, so the fish die off.
Okay, so this is water going through the treatment works back into the natural world.
Back to a beautiful loch, so we have to protect it.
Excellent. So that beautiful loch is in Ireland. Are you working from Ireland, or are you?
No, I'm working from home. So I basically give them the ideas, and there's a site contractor which implements them.
Ah, okay. And is this typical work that you do within your consultancy business?
This is my work is all atypical. So this basically, I used to work for the company that supplied their sewage treatment plant, but they don't have much process knowledge. And after I left the company, my client came to me and they said, "Help us out here," and I'm very happy to exercise my skills and knowledge.
Okay, good. That sounds good. Does your expertise kind of take you into lots of different areas around wastewater treatment and beyond?
Yes, yes. I started out my career in Saudi Arabia working on the petrochemical plants in Jubail Industrial City. So we used to analyze the waters in the boilers and the cooling towers. And I quickly learned the trade. I learned how to use the spectrophotometer to analyze different water samples, just make sure the water chemistry is okay. And then I started working in power stations, and I did a stint of about 10, 11 years. So that was very fascinating to see the nexus between water and energy. You need energy to treat waste water, and you need water to produce energy. So they're always interrelated.
Very true. Yep. And I must admit, I didn't know that up until a few months ago. I don't know huge amounts about energy generation, but I'm educating myself as I go along, which hopefully a lot more people will do, so they get an idea of where does this power come from that we're using to power our laptops and that kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
it's something that just comes through the plug, doesn't it? So, but there's
Yeah,
a huge amount that goes into it.
yeah, I mean, we all are familiar with wind power and solar power. It's very simple, but a power station, whether it's nuclear or fossil fuel powered, it's a very complex engineering system.
Hmm. So, what kind of other projects do you get involved in now?
I'm also teaching a reverse osmosis course. Throughout my work on power stations, I got to work with reverse osmosis because you need to produce ultra pure water, demineralized water for the boiler. And reverse osmosis involves surface science, which is what my master's is in. It involves chemistry, it involves microbiology, and I just found it so fascinating. And it's also a very important technology. RO supplies 1% of the world's drinking water these days in arid regions that are by the sea, like Saudi Arabia, some parts of Spain, Canary Islands. Yeah, I'm teaching this RO course and they're trying to improve best practices in that area.
Okay. Okay. What does a do you have a normal day? What does a normal day look like?
It's never boring for me, really. Every day I come up with new ideas. I post on LinkedIn. I network with very interesting professionals that I can help or that I can learn from. So there's never a boring day in the life of a consultant.
No, I can imagine so. Now, I don't want you to give away any secrets, but where do your clients come from? How do they get to know who you are and that kind of thing?
Like I said, sometimes it's word of mouth, but sometimes I approach people. Like I approached the Saudi water conversion company, and obviously Saudi Arabia gets 90% of its drinking water from the sea. And I told them, listen, I'm teaching a course with CIWEM, and maybe I can help you guys out. So I have the additional advantage of speaking Arabic, the local language, and knowing the local culture. So sometimes people approach me, sometimes I approach them.
I did not know that 90% of the drinking water in Saudi Arabia came from the
From
sea.
the sea, yeah. I mean, it's a
Interesting.
desert, so
Yeah.
they get few millimeters of rain every year, and when it rains, it pours. Everything goes back to the sea because the land is parched.
So is that similar to a lot of countries around the world? As in those who are
Africa. I
droughts and
mean,
so on?
obviously, Africa has a green belt around the middle, but in the north and in the south, I think Algeria, they also have reverse osmosis plants. I'm not sure about Egypt, but all these northern African countries and anywhere that's desert or arid, and you have access to seawater, and you have energy, you can produce drinking water.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So we've spoke to the last two episodes of EnvCast we've had a farmer and we've had a consultant who runs their own business. So you're also someone who runs their own business. What made you decide to go on your own and have your own company? I think it was in 2016.
2015 was the first time I came to the UK, and I was invited I was working at the time in Iraq. So they told me, come to Carrington Power Station because the main contractor is Alstom, and I had worked for them 10 years. And the main contractor, DF, they told me come and help us out. So it was basically a freelance job. So I take whatever I get offered. Sometimes I work full time for companies, but I prefer the flexibility of consulting and being
Yeah.
freelance.
I guess you get all sorts of different experiences by doing that. And I saw through my very in-depth LinkedIn research that you've worked at very short stints at various organizations over the last few years. Is that how the consultancy business kind of works?
I mean, it's high octane. You can make an impact very quickly, but the project can fizz out also very quickly. I was at a plastics recycling facility in Bristol last year, Viridor. I was managing their £2 million project to treat the wastewater from the plastics recycling. By the way, plastic recycling, it sounds environmentally friendly, but the process itself is very dirty. It requires energy, chemicals, and it produces a lot of wastewater. So Wessex Water was squeezing Viridor and telling them, maybe I shouldn't be saying names, but basically they're telling them you have to reduce the volume of wastewater discharge and you have to treat it. You have to remove certain ions in it like sulfates and chlorides. And for 2 years, they were going back and forth, and they had to invest this capital investment to treat the wastewater. But then Wessex Water suddenly said, oh, you can keep the volume discharge and the parameters. So basically, the project was shelved. And a lot of energy had gone in from the contractor. Obviously, I was managing the contractor with my specialized knowledge. But yeah, the project was shelved. And at that point, I joined another company working on a Thames Water framework.
Okay. But I guess the example you just given around wastewater and the recycling of plastics isn't all green, despite what the label suggests it might be. And I guess that's one of the examples of a number of environmental changes that you can make, like going to an electric car. It's not all green. It's still got more embedded bodied carbon than petrol cars and that kind of thing. I guess it's just a good example of there isn't one sole change that you can make that is entirely environmentally friendly sometimes. It's an interesting way of looking at it. To make environmental improvements, sometimes you have to prioritize things over others, by the sounds of it. Right. So you've obviously got a huge amount of knowledge in terms of wastewater treatment and that kind of thing. What kind of skills and qualifications have you developed over the last, throughout your career that has allowed you to now be an expert consultant?
Well, I did my master's degree in chemistry and my bachelor's degree in chemistry. So I have a very in-depth understanding of basic chemistry. But then a lot of my applied knowledge I learned on the job and by reading a lot of books, a lot of articles, and so forth. So it's like you're always learning in this field. It's amazing.
And has your work across the various different countries? Again, my LinkedIn research is coming into the fore here, but I think you've worked in France, Switzerland, Poland, Bulgaria, Lebanon, USA. You mentioned Saudi as well, and obviously now in the UK and Ireland. So how has that shaped your knowledge and understanding throughout your career?
Absolutely. I mean, it gives you a global perspective about things, and sometimes we tend to close ourselves up in our own shell. We get plastics all the way in the North Pole, but the source of those plastics is poor Asian countries and poor African countries, where their rivers are basically open sewers. That's where the plastics comes from. We tend to blame ourselves too much in the West on CO2 emissions, but plastics, microplastics are coming from poor Asian countries, and we have to look at planet Earth as a global village from this perspective, and we have to help each other out. Africa doesn't have CO2 emissions. If you look at the CO2 emissions map, Africa is green, but Europe, USA and China is very red. So we need to produce less CO2 like these poor countries, but they need to learn from us how to treat, their sewage and their wastewater. We can learn from each other.
Yeah, I guess every country has their different priorities, and there's different environmental priorities that come with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
like the challenges you've mentioned in terms of, do you recycle plastic and produce lots of wastewater?
Yeah.
Do you just produce plastic waste? I'm not advocating any of these, by the way. It's just some of the challenges that environmental professionals might have, and the general public, with their
Yeah.
choices. So was it by design that you have been to these and worked in these various different countries? Was it part of your plan?
No, it's sometimes I don't plan what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone a year from now. So I go with the flow and roll with the punches, and wherever there's a problem, I roll my sleeves up and then fix it. Saudi Arabia, as you are aware, it has a huge petrochemical industry, so a chemist will always find a job there, and I did. That was my first job, and I'm very proud of it. I worked a little bit in Lebanon, in a company that treats swimming pools, small sewage treatment plants. I was even at the Pepsi Cola plant in Lebanon. They have an RO plant because they want to start with a demineralized water, basically, to produce Coca-Cola and Pepsi, so as the variations in water chemistry in different countries don't affect the taste. So the RO got fouled, and I quickly did an SDI test, something called an SDI test, silt density index. And it's a filter, a 45 micron, 0.45 micron filter that filters the water, and it turned black. So I realized that their active carbon filter is leaching dust. And we did a simple citric acid clean, and the wastewater came out black. It was amazing. And this is all like thinking on the job, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to, so when you said it came out black, I was going to assume that's probably a bad thing, but I wasn't too sure.
No, it doesn't get to the Pepsi Cola. It gets stuck on the membrane, and then the membrane
Right.
gets fouled, and you're not producing water anymore.
Okay. So it's not the reason for the color of cola.
No,
Good
it's
good
not.
secret ingredients.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I think you've mentioned a few challenges already, and you do a lot of thinking on the job.
Yeah.
Are these just normal examples of the kind of challenges that you find? And I guess part of your role as a consultant is to address the challenges that these companies have. What
Yeah.
kind of challenges do you find?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, to be honest, is to have the right person on the right job. Sometimes I've seen this in practice. You get a big committee trying to solve a simple problem, and the guy on the top of the committee, he doesn't have the technical knowledge or the experience to make the final decision. And perhaps there are smarter people working for him, but they don't want to take the responsibility to make the decisions, and they're not supposed to. So you get the ball getting kicked around for weeks, for months, and the project gets delayed and decision is not made. So the number one important factor in any technology, not just water treatment, is to run it as a meritocracy. The best person, most intelligent, most experienced should be running things, and not certain manager types, so to speak.
Absolutely. And one of the big bits of feedback we get from chartered environmentalists is that chartered environmentalist status actually gives them that jump up the hierarchy in terms of decisions and being able to have that influence across decisions. And we're also, as an organization, Society of the Environment, trying to get more chartered environmentalists and RFPs and RFTechs into the higher positions, into board levels and that kind of thing, to help address those decisions that are being made without the relevant knowledge. And just because you're a chartered environmentalist doesn't mean you have the specialist knowledge in the particular topic that they're trying to address, but it gives you a broad understanding of the climates that you're working in.
Yeah, we need to train the next generation of leaders. That's what it's down to. I think worldwide there is a crisis of leadership. Incompetent people are running big countries sometimes, big projects, big commissions, and you need the right leadership, basically. And the world badly needs it, I think.
Yeah, leadership with expertise should bring the trust.
That's it.
Something for us all to work on.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of the roles that you've had recently, or your job overall?
Yeah, I just derive immense pleasure from protecting the environment. I almost see it like a spiritual mission. My latest slogan is Amor Mater Natura, which means love Mother Nature, and it sounds very fancy in Latin. So, like I said, in when I was when I sent in my answers for the interview to Sophie, I was asked, what was your earliest experience with pollution? And unfortunately, it was in Lebanon. I went to a beautiful stretch of beach in Beirut that's polluted by sewage, and I got a rash on my face that wouldn't go away for a year. And I had a beautiful face back then, unlike now. So it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing being a kid with red spots on my face. So yeah, but that's the situation 30, 40 years later. Lebanon is still pouring tons of sewage in the Mediterranean. They don't have the money to treat it or the land capacity. So it's very unfortunate.
So you're driven by the passion to make some change.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big time lover of nature. In Lebanon, like I said, or like I mentioned, I used to go fishing and snorkeling. So I find tremendous peace in the arms of nature.
Hmm.
And we, as the top of the food chain, we are entrusted with the responsibility to care for nature. So it's a very high mission to be an environmentalist.
Absolutely. Do you
Yeah.
feel like you're making a difference?
Absolutely, yeah. My small difference, just solving little environmental pollution problems here and there, but I also want to make a big difference. And one of them is, as you are aware, even though we live in the UK, we still have combined sewage overflows. So how do you solve that problem? And one way to approach it is to eliminate the source. We can do that. And another way is to intensify the process. So basically, all these mega sewage treatment plants, how do we get more out of them? So this is the next big challenge for me, is to approach these mega water treatment companies and suggest ideas how to do it, either by modifying the technique or just with simple chemicals, which, I know there's some tricks that can help these water treatment companies.
Well, I, for one, am very happy that we have a number of passionate leaders in terms of the environment, such as yourselves, that are trying to make a big difference.
Thank you.
Now, you became self-employed in around 2015. You became a chartered environmentalist in 2016.
Yeah.
What does being a chartered environmentalist mean to you?
Well, it's a badge of honor and it's a seal of professionalism, basically, and an opportunity to network with like-minded people like yourselves.
And do you find it important being kind of recognized as an environmental professional with the external badge of recognition? Has that helped your career so far?
I feel that it helps. I mean, sometimes people look at the letters after the name, so to speak, but it's a question of honor for me and professionalism and networking, basically.
Okay. What would you say to others thinking about a career in the environment, which has got a huge amount of potential, I suppose, and the potential of progressing to things like chartered environmentalist status?
I think it is one of the most important careers out there. Unfortunately, I come from a country where the mentality is a little bit, I want my son to be a doctor and a lawyer. And it's not just my country. I think it's sometimes everywhere. But look, I had a passion for chemistry from a very young age, and I didn't even want to be a pharmacist. My dad wanted me to be a pharmacist. It's a good, secure job. But no, I kept on pursuing my chemistry, and luckily I found an area of applied chemistry which is so fascinating. And I don't believe any of my friend engineers and doctors find their jobs as fascinating as I do.
No.
So go for it. It's a very rewarding and beautiful career.
Well, if you find a career like that you're so passionate about, then
Yeah.
it must have its rewarding elements to it.
Absolutely. It's not just about the money. The money will come as soon as you find purpose and meaning in your life and passion in your career.
Have you found that the perception of those who are interested in the environment, those environmental professionals, does that vary a lot between the countries that you've worked in, or has it varied
Absolutely.
over the years?
Absolutely. I mean, again, an example is Lebanon. I studied in a very prestigious university, but there wasn't even an environmental engineering program back then. And I went to the library. They have chemical engineering. I looked for a book on reverse osmosis. I couldn't find one single book. Now it's changing a little bit, but you find sometimes that universities tend to focus a lot on theory, less on practice. And that was one drawback in my university. The theory was so intense that when I went to graduate school in Texas, I had studied the courses they're offering me back in on undergraduate studies. And that sometimes too much knowledge is not a good thing. So sometimes you need practical knowledge. So
yeah, sometimes the theory can be quite broad, I suppose. And then you've obviously, I suppose, narrowed down your expertise towards wastewater and chemistry. Is that a path that you're continuing down? Are you looking to expand your knowledge horizons elsewhere, or?
Well, I go vertically and I go horizontally. Basically, vertically by trying to understand things like reverse osmosis more, better and better and better and better. I try to read the latest published papers, but sometimes you find that there's too much information that I already know about. I mean, for example, they are doing the gene sequencing of the bacteria that are on the reverse osmosis membrane. Okay, what do I need the gene sequence for it? I just need to do a CIP and I want to clean those bugs off the membrane. That's all I need from a practical point of view. Sometimes good things come out of research, but 99 up to 95%, it's just knowledge of the details of a practical issue that I have, and I really need to solve the practical issues, not have deeper knowledge about it.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're not going to struggle with your next continuous professional development submission to continuous chartered environmentalist.
Always something new to add on the CPD.
Always doing your reading. Excellent. Yeah. Good to hear. Now, next one's quite a simple question, but it could be quite a complex answer. I don't know. Yeah. What's next for you?
I've been doing research on oil and gas wastewater treatment. I've been doing research on nuclear power station water treatment, and I realized it's very similar to a fossil fuel power stations, with the exception of you have to do a lot of measurements for safety and radioactivity. But the next big thing for the UK is basically what's coming out of the sewage treatment plants. Is a lot of insecticides, antibiotics, things like PFAS, and Switzerland has already started to remove those things. So the UK will eventually legislate that these, in AMP8 or AMP9, we have to start removing these chemicals which are accumulating in the environment. So the cost-effective solutions are there, but they're going to be massive projects to manage to implement the solutions.
Are those kind of chemicals a new thing, or is it just now more of a priority to address the chemicals coming out?
No, they've always been there. Basically, you take an antibiotic. The wastewater in a hospital can be rich in antibiotics, in viruses, bacteria, certain media used in MRIs, X-rays, and things like that. So I think, Holland has, or the Netherlands have already taken the initiative to treat the pollution at the source. And I think this is one strategy that will work in the UK is you tell the hospital, don't just put your sewage into our drain, our Thames water network. I need you to kill those bacteria at the source.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, returning to your question, these chemicals have always been there. I mean, I've used Teflon pans for, they've been known for 20, 30 years. But guess what? When you have a little scratch on the pan with a knife or a fork, then a little bit of PFAS goes into the sewer. And this molecule with a carbon fluorine bond that bacteria cannot break down, it becomes a forever chemical, and it's affecting bacteria, fish, all kinds of things. It will affect you if it gets in your drinking water.
Yeah, there is such a huge amount of areas to focus on, isn't there, when it comes to environmental chemistry, the environment generally, but environmental chemistry. We are using more and more chemicals, I believe, as far as I know, and we need to make sure we're treating them in the right way. How important do you think chemistry is to, I say, addressing many environmental issues? Is it pretty fundamental?
Oh, it's a massive question. I mean, chemistry is everywhere. Basically, anything you can see, feel, touch, taste is basically chemistry. I hope we can start to simplify things. You go to the supermarket, you buy too many things packaged in plastic that end up in the trash. You buy your Coca-Cola bottle in a plastic bottle that's supposedly recycle, but hey, what if we have a glass bottle, we just fill it up at the source and use the bottle over and over again? So elimination is better. I think we need to return back to nature also. This is my message, is just simplify things. A paper bag is better than a plastic bag. Eventually goes back to nature. Or forever bags, reusable bags, even better. So, there are 3, 4, or sometimes up to 7 R's: recycle, remove, upcycle. And we have to spread that gospel and do it more and more and consume less and less.
I suppose we've gone through decades of overconsumption and overcomplicating every part of our lives in many ways. So the simplification message makes things simpler, doesn't it, really? You don't have to overcomplicate things with all of the science, although we do need the science to solve a lot of the problems. But in terms of public habits and so on, simplification message must be quite a powerful one. So we'll see how it goes. Last question for you.
Yeah.
If you were able to influence world leaders for a day, what would you concentrate? What would be the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, absolutely. I mean, someone who has grown up in a civil war, I know the horrors of war, the difficulties of war, and wars tend to be led by men, if you've noticed. So I think we need more women in world leadership, because no woman is going to send her son to get killed in a war. She gave birth to this life. And I don't even know how, I don't know. I don't have a son, but I imagine it's difficult for the fathers too. So number one is before you can take care of the environment, you need to create peace in the world and end all wars. And it's just trillions and trillions of dollars going into building these weapons. And it seems like we haven't learned anything from 2,000 years of warfare. We keep making the same mistakes.
Well, that is something that I can definitely not disagree with. That's absolutely makes a huge amount of sense. Then that brings our EnvCast today to a close. So thank you very, very much, Rami, for your insights across the board. We've covered a lot of topics there. And in fact, we've covered a lot of geography as well. So it's been really fascinating. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. If you wanted to follow in Rami's footsteps by becoming a chartered environmentalist and showcase your environmental knowledge, then please check out CIWEM's website, which is ciwem.org. That's CIWEM.org. And we're going to put a link to the Chartered Environmentalist page on the website in the podcast description. So just give that a tap or a click. Next month, we move into the world of academia with a Chartered Environmentalist lecturer in sustainable futures. So something slightly different. So please subscribe to our podcast and don't miss it. We'll see you then. Thank you for listening to today's EnvCast episode. If you'd like to hear more about the Chartered Environmentalist, Registered Environmental Practitioner, or Registered Environmental Technician registrations, please look at our resources available at socenv.org.uk. Alternatively, visit our YouTube channel, where you can find a variety of environmental webinar series, registration guides, and various insights from registrants themselves. Just search for Society for the Environment on YouTube. To keep up to date with what's going on at the Society for the Environment, you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @socenv_HQ and via LinkedIn by searching for Society for the Environment with SocEnv in the brackets. We will release a new EnvCast episode on the first Wednesday of each month. So if you're interested in future podcasts, please do subscribe. You can subscribe and review through a variety of platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Castbox.